I am here to share wisdom and the highest truth for the betterment of all beings. An amazing journey into the psychotic mind, breaking the spell of the ivory tower.
I found the book The Voice of Knowledge by Miguel Ruiz, a South American Yaqui shaman,
Hmm.
and he was talking about these things. So I hit a chapter where he was talking about something that looked just like the voices, and he was saying also that they were parasites. And I went, that's very interesting. Somebody else who sees this. So I brought that into the prison, and I brought this fella back in, and I said, I'm going to read you this paragraph. I'd like you to tell me what you think about it. I was always doing stuff like that. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? What do the voices do when you do this? I mean, constant, hundreds of questions. So I read that paragraph to him. When I got to the part where he was talking about these things being vampires,
Yeah.
energy sucking creatures, all of a sudden behind my head, a loud electrical crackle erupted. It was like crack. And I'm like, what blazes is that? And then it started moving to my right, and it went onto the right hand wall, and it started moving up the wall. And I look at him, and he's got this zombie like look on his face. He's just staring at me. And I'm like, he's going to attack. And I pushed my chair against the wall with my feet toward him just in case he did. And then I asked him, do you hear that? He didn't say anything. He just kept staring at me like a zombie. He just staring at me. And I'm like, this is weird. And this thing here's this crackling on the wall, moving up the right hand wall. I couldn't see it. I couldn't smell it. There was no taste to it. It
You could
just kept
hear it.
cracking. I could hear it, and it was loud, and it was moving, and it was just a crack all the way up the wall, and then across the entire room. And so it wasn't just short. It wasn't like a minute or 30 seconds. This went on for a while, and then it cracked down the left-hand wall, and then it jumped into a Rubbermaid trash can right at my left leg, and it's crackling in the trash can. And the whole time I'm keeping an eye on this guy and looking at the crackle. I didn't see anything. I bent over looking at the trash can. There's nothing there, just the crackling. And then all of a sudden, just like that, boom, it went out. It stopped, and I'm in shock again. This guy slowly gets up, and he goes, "I gotta leave." And he shuffles out of the office, and I'm like, yeah, yeah, get the hell out of here, man. Go.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, my mind is totally blown. Twice, I didn't think these things could affect physical reality.
Right.
Now, twice they've already done it right to my face on purpose to spite me. And I'm thinking, if they can do that, what else can they do?
Right.
I didn't know. There was no roadmap, there was no guidebook to this. This was a whole different area of reality that I'm entering, and I'm not sure I wanted to go in there.
Yeah. Exactly.
And it was like opening the door to a whole different reality,
Yeah.
and not knowing what's there, or what the ground rules are, or what can hurt you there, or it's like visiting a foreign country and not knowing any of the rules or the language or anything. But I just went into shock. I got up, I examined the walls. There were no burn mark. There was no evidence whatsoever of anything having happened. I went out in the hallway. The doctor's office was empty. He wasn't in yet. The nurse wasn't in yet. There was no cause that I could see for this. There was no explanation. And I just closed my office and stared out the window for the whole day. I was in shock. I was in absolute shock. So it took me probably 3 months, I think it was, to get up the courage to call this guy back and start talking to him about what happened that day. And he showed up and he was in good shape. I thought he would be a wreck. So if he had something that could do this in him,
Yeah.
and I started asking him, he looked good. I said, I'm surprised you look good. And he goes, no, I'm doing what you told me to. I haven't lost any ground, but I haven't gained any. So he said, I'm holding them off. I got rid of them, but I'm holding them off. And I asked him, did you hear that crackling in the office the last time you were here? And he said, yeah, I heard it. But he said, I'm surprised you heard it. And I said, yeah, I heard it. And I said, what was that? And he said, that was them. I said, them who? The voices? He said, yeah, that was the voices. And I said, what in the blazes were they doing? And he said, they were trying to scare you off. And he said, they did a damn good job of it.
Yeah.
Like I didn't call him in for 3 months. And then he says, I was surprised you heard it. He told me. And I said, "You looked really weird when you got up to get out of the office. You looked like a zombie." I said, "What were you thinking? What were the voices telling you when when you were walking out of the office?" He said, "They were telling me to go get a shank and stick it in your gut, a homemade prison knife." And I'm thinking, "Oh, he wouldn't do that. I've worked with him for 6 months. I know him. He's an okay guy. He's trying." And I said, "Why didn't you do it?" He said, "I couldn't find one and nobody would give me one."
Yeah, that's a lot. That's, that's a lot, to say the least.
But yeah, I think what saved me is I'm an adrenaline junkie. I always have been. If I wasn't, I don't think I could have done this.
Yeah. When I read your book, I was like, this guy's a warrior. I feel it, I see it. It takes courage and bravery to go into these realms where truth lies in whatever capacity in which we're doing it. And this one's a big one because it's interesting because I think more people are getting more open to this concept today because there's more being revealed. It is the quote unquote apocalypse. It is the unveiling of truths. However, I do know from personal experience there are people that I know and I know well that are very much afflicted in this way, yet remain extremely blocked in allowing themselves to actually see the reality of what is transpiring for them, which again, I just go over this list that because I wrote it all down as you were going through it. It's interesting because you can literally go down the list and see this happening in
Yes,
people and it absolutely is a pattern. And with that blockage and that lack of so no matter what spiritual undertaking that someone takes on, if they are continuously blocked to the fact that it is actually entities outside of themselves causing these horrific thoughts, very much so into the point of you don't deserve you why are you even here kind of connotations is it's just it's like the trip just continuing down the same it is
it's very insidious because you experience thoughts in your head, and we're taught. Everybody believes that you experience them in your head. They belong to you. Manuel Swedenborg, the Christian mystic, he said none of your thoughts belong to you. They either come in from heaven or they come in from hell. You're the chooser. You're the one who chooses to entertain those thoughts. And if you give your attention to the negative ones, then the negative ones grow. So it's like the natives said, you have two wolves on each shoulder. The one you feed is the one that's going to grow. And it's just like the cartoons. Here's the angels on one side trying to talk sense to you, and then the demons on the other side. Oh, it's more fun to do this stuff. So it's a battle. It's a constant spiritual
truly
battle.
truly. When it's come into my awareness and knowing that this kind of extreme in this negative pathway was never meant to get to this place that we're in now because it actually stops creation. It stops the ability for someone to evolve if they're constantly imagine how many people are the committing of the suicide the it's just it takes you into the it truly creates in a place that wasn't supposed to be hell.
Right.
And this awareness is so that's why this awareness is so imperative, so vital. Because if more humans can realize this negative aspect is not them, is not us,
Right.
it actually allows us to truly, they energy will die, so to speak. Yeah.
I actually had one schizophrenic write me back and said, "Thank you for letting me know that these voices aren't me." He said, "I can handle it from here." That's the first thing that they need to understand, that those voices aren't them. And that's what they're being blocked from by the establishment, by the mental health establishment.
Yes.
Oh, it's you. It's your brain is broken. There's nothing you can do except take our expensive toxic
Mm,
meds. You can't fight back. You can't do anything. You're helpless. You have to rely on us and our expensive meds. You have to keep come seeing us. No, they have to fight back against these things. You can't
exactly.
tolerate them. You have to fight back. If you don't fight back, they will push your personality out of the way and they will take over. And believe me, I've seen people where they have taken them over. Talking about what to do, uh,
Yeah.
the first thing that a schizophrenic needs to understand is that those voices are not them.
Yep.
The voices want them to believe that they are them. That has to be established, that it's not them. Those voices are not in their best interest. Their intention is not in the best interest of the client. They're liars. They haven't done anything good for them. Can't be trusted. So you have to break the voices away from the victim. It's
Yeah,
the voices that drive paranoid schizophrenia. If you can get rid of them by any means, exorcism, drugs, whatever, person returns to normal, just like that. So there has to be a break. Otherwise, the person believes that it's them. Something's wrong with them. And,
exactly.
and that causes more confusion and paranoia because it's okay, my mind is gone. I don't have control of my mind. It's not like there's this external force trying to attack me. It's my mind is broken. And that's exactly what friggin' psychiatry and Big Pharma are telling them.
Exactly.
That is a grave disservice. It's disgusting.
It is.
And they don't know any better. They're a bunch of freaking morons.
Exactly. And to that point real quick, I cannot almost say these words anymore because with the information that's available and just an awareness of come on, ask one question why. We can't sit here and say they don't know any better anymore. It's just mass delusion at this point and just putting your head down to get money and to just it's like ignorance is a choice today, I guess is what I'm trying ignorance,
Well,
ignoring,
you look what goes on. They go to medical school. They spend what 5 years studying psychiatry and all this garbage. They're invested in it. Now they have a profession. They can't change that. They know they're not curing anybody. Nobody's getting any better. That's probably part of their suicide rate,
Yeah,
you know.
definitely.
But they're trapped. They're trapped by the medical system. They got to pay their dues. They got to pay the bills.
Yeah,
They're trapped. But
yeah.
something has come out fairly recently, a energetic psychotherapy. It was not developed by a psychologist or a psychiatrist or an academic. It was developed by a ship captain who was a master mariner who always wondered about why people never got better by just talking to them. He later went and got his master's degree. The guy's name is John Mace. He developed a system called the Mace Energy Method.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I read that on your site that you became a practitioner within the method,
As
right?
soon as I saw that information, I said, "This makes sense. This makes sense." I got led by almost a mystical circuitous route and found myself face to face with the chief training officer of the Mace system,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
we were bantering a little bit together. And I said, "I already read Mace's books. I was able to piece enough of it together for it to work. I'm using it with my clients. Why do I need to go for this expensive
Certification.
training?"
Mhm.
And she goes, "That's just the tip of the iceberg. There's a
Mm.
lot more." I went and I got certified, and I'm glad I did. People are recovering it. And matter of fact, I think I have a couple of testimonials here. I'm just picking them randomly. This one says, "Hi Jerry, I wanted to let me get my glasses here. Wanted to thank you for the 3 sessions we had to date, surpassing the results of 30 years of cognitive therapy."
Mm.
Says it still baffles me, being someone who wants to grasp intellectually what's going on, how this therapy is straight to the point in dealing with these debilitating upsets. And after each session, there was a sense of freeing up that felt almost strange but peaceful. It still feels like the process of integrating my original life self into life. Overall, a tremendous growth. Thank you. You know,
That's
I,
awesome.
li- I listened to what John Adry had to say, and I think this should be listened to by everyone. Let me see what else I got here. Here's another one. The session we had yesterday, I totally have more energy now. I'd like to set up another session to clean house. And it's one after another. They're going, this stuff works.
Yeah, and I think you like uniquely are poised to bring that work a different way than potentially anyone else because of your experience in knowing what these patterns are, how to and ways to break those patterns. So it's I think it's very interesting to look at your weaving of journey because it is extremely unique and that really in and of itself probably lends to such a greater degree of just feeling someone feeling I would say safe in your presence because you have you're already separating them from the negativity in which has brought down their life in however
Well,
many ways, right?
there's such a stigma to schizophrenia that they don't want to talk to anybody about it because it's
Exactly.
like, whoa, like that. When I was working in the emergency room, yeah, I could feel these things. I couldn't hear them, I couldn't see them, but I could feel them. It was like this icky electrical energy,
Yes.
and I would ask the
Back of your
patient, I
neck
go,
kinda thing.
it was my whole body. It
Yeah,
was like the closest I when you get goose pimples, but it wasn't goose pimples. It was like this icky electrical energy. There's no other feeling like it on the planet that I've ever experienced.
exactly.
You know, and
I
the
had
stronger they
similar.
were, or the angrier they were, the more intense that feeling was. So I could ask a person in the emergency room, "Are you hearing voices?" And they go, they didn't want to go into the hospital. They caused a lot of trouble. And I would ask them, and I'd get that feeling. And they would lie to me. They'd say, "No, I'm not hearing voices." I said, "Yes, you are, and this is how strong they are." And they were like, "How do you know? How'd you know that?" They, I know what this is like. I know what what these voices do, what they're like. I understand them. It's just to have somebody who understands what these things are helps a lot
Yes.
because
It's and
everybody
to
else is telling them, "Oh, okay, you're broken, you're crazy, something's wrong with you."
exactly. Yeah, even people I've come across this experience of people that are very spiritual and not religious, meaning just spiritual in nature, knowing attaching themselves to this concept of the divine and whatever, still being very blocked with this because too many spiritual people have said it's something wrong with you that you need to integrate, or there's some kind of all of this trauma that's happened, there's a reason why it's happening to you, you have to figure it out and fix it, a feeling.
I had somebody yesterday, a client I was working with. She was an architect in Spain, and she said, "I spent my whole life trying to figure out what's wrong with me." And so has a friend of mine who was she had her PhD in something, and we were both trying to figure out what went wrong with us. Inside of an hour, we had it with the MACE system. What had happened to her as a child, where she made a decision about herself, ruined a good segment of her life.
Yeah.
You know, because what happens with it, virtually everybody goes through a trauma, and schizophrenics go through a lot of traumas.
Yeah.
MACE can dissolve a trauma in an hour, and a lifelong trauma that's been there buried for decades can be gotten rid of just like that
Yeah.
because MACE have a spiritual component to it. And that was one of the things that John struggled with for a long time is okay, you got the subconscious or the ego burying this garbage, this
Yeah.
trauma in the subconscious to get rid of it. So it's no longer conscious,
Right.
but it's burying it alive. It's still alive there. You're
Exactly.
not
It's still the
aware of it
energy.
anymore, but the energy is still there.
Yeah.
It's like a computer virus
Yeah.
in your brain.
Yep.
You know, so say you were traumatized by a certain kind of person at some time in your life when maybe when you were a kid. That trauma's buried, but every time you run into a person like that, this goes off and there's an upset. And that upset gets projected outward at that person who is similar to what's buried in your subconscious. And your ego's telling them to either attack that person or run from them or avoid them. But every time you run into somebody like that, you're going to be upset. You're going to get upset. You're going to get angry. You're going to get irritated,
Yep.
and you don't even know why. Because
Triggers.
it looks like somebody. Yeah, it's exactly. It's a trigger.
Yeah.
He looks like somebody I hate.
Yep. Yep.
So what Mace does, it goes in there and it dissolves that. Okay. And what's so interesting about Mace, the therapist doesn't even need to know what the trauma is. You don't have to talk about it. They don't even need to know what it is to help you get rid of it. And the spiritual part is the spirit is used to locate where that trauma is buried. So the patient is asked to form an image of the negative identity or the components of that trauma. Once that image is formed, that's the location, that's the mailbox, that's where it's at. And once you know where it's at, then you can go after it and it can be dissolved.
Because it's like just the way I've always described it is to see it and to know it is just a layer of being able to dissolve it because you finally are
Well,
recognizing it's even
you
there.
can know about it, but the spirit will reabsorb it. If you make the right connection, the spirit will absorb that negative identity, the energy that's negative energy that's stuck there, and it will return it to you as positive energy. So, like this lady was saying, hey, I feel more energy. That's because that negative energy has been transformed from negative to positive by the spirit of the being,
That's beautiful. Yep.
and it can happen within an hour.
Right. Yeah.
So
Not months, years.
now, yeah, like this other lady said, I've been going to psychotherapy for all my life, and it's nothing's changed.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this
Exactly.
stuff really works. When I saw it, I went, "Wow, this is what I've been looking for all my life." And that's what one other Mace therapist, who was she was a physician's assistant. Same thing. She goes, "This crap isn't working." She did the same thing I did. She saw this and she went, "This works."
Yeah.
So
You actually get to the root cause.
you actually get to the root cause, and that root cause is removed. It's transformed into positive energy and brought back to you as positive energy. It's no longer in your universe. It's not there. It will never be triggered again. So even if you're hearing voices and Mace doesn't get rid of the voices, it will get rid of the trauma that the voices feed off of. So
Right.
you will get better anyway because that trauma is not there anymore.
Yeah. And I would dare say that it is the trauma that cracks the auric field, our subtle bodies, and allows the energy to penetrate in there. And therein lies the growth of that said negative entity, that unwanted.
There's other crazy stuff that cracks that field also, one of which is Ouija boards.
Yes.
They are not toys.
No, they are
Believe
not.
me, they are not toys.
Nope.
I know that several people who went psychotic on Ouija boards. They were playing, talking to whatever spirit they were talking to, and then one day they started hearing that spirit in their head,
Yep.
and it was there.
Yep.
They couldn't get rid of it. So now they were hearing voices just like the psychotics.
Yep.
Meth is another one. It just cracks open the psychic field and just allows these things to pour in. Meth is a very dangerous drug. Just cracks open your psychic protection, and the prisoners called it the devil's drug.
Wow.
So, any of you guys thinking of going to a psychiatrist to get drugged for something or other, don't do that. Contact a MACE practitioner. You can go to www.com. There's a list of practitioners all over the planet. There's not a lot of us right now, but it's growing.
Yeah.
You'll come out a lot cheaper and a lot better shape than if you went to a psychiatrist and get poisoned with their
Yep.
toxic meds.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Everybody's got two guardian angels. They can't help you unless you ask them. Stay away from everything negative. No negative movies, no negative murder mysteries, no war movies, no. Now, one thing I forgot to mention about these patterns that I was talking about, if you look at those patterns, you'll see it's the same crap that's coming over the mainstream media right now.
Yeah.
There's a one-to-one correspondence between these patterns that the schizophrenics are hearing and what the mainstream media is cramming down our throats right now. ABC, NBC, CNN,
Yep.
BBC, all of them. It's
Yep.
all the same patterns: negativity, anti-religious, foster negative emotion. It's all the same. There's a one-to-one correspondence.
Yep.
These are demons that are running this planet right now.
Yep.
These Western leaders are psychotic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the interesting thing through all of my trainings and research, the one thing that has always been taken out of Western anything has been this protection magic, if you will, or we could say just wait. There was always, as a master herbalist, part of folklore was always protecting your home with specific plants and specific things. All of this used to be part of it was just what people were always doing and always did to protect their homes, protect their energy, protect, and that was completely abolished at some point as crazy land. And the
Yeah,
reality is then in
science. Trust the science.
right, exactly.
You
And
know,
but in the East, there's ancient lineages of exorcists. I had one on my podcast, on this same podcast. So this is very real.
you look at the Bible. Jesus banished demons out of people 23 times.
Yeah.
And today it's, oh, That's 2,000 years ago. There's no demons now. Where'd they go? They all die off? No. You know, that's the biggest trick that the devil ever pulled over our eyes, is that he doesn't exist. The demons don't exist.
These, yeah, and again, there's a million ways that we can even describe it. It's energy. It is a technology. It's like, the way that I've seen it is, it's really, it's like telepathic technology, right? So you could have entities that are utilizing this, because the strength level changes, as you also had noticed. It's different. Some will just are, oh, you're boring, I'm done with you. But that's not the case for all these people that are being inflicted with this. The strength of the very technology or voices are different. It's not the
Yeah,
same.
the patterns are the same. It's
Right.
almost like they're all made from the same cookie cutter in some
Right.
cosmic factory somewhere, because they're all running on the same. They're all saying the same kind of things.
But the level is turned up on
But
some.
the level, there's different levels of them. There's
Right.
different strengths of them. So the basic ones, the regular voices, they're like the foot soldiers.
Right.
And now the foot soldiers have to give a good part of the energy that they steal to their bosses above them. So they're slaves. They're
Right.
assigned to destroy specific people. And if they don't do a good enough job, they'll remove them and replace them with others. I remember there was one girl where her voices weren't doing good enough to messing her up. So she said they took her old voice away and they put somebody meaner in there. Said he wasn't mean enough. And they'll just keep pushing. They'll push they're constant, they're relentless.
Yeah.
Nothing else to do. So they will just keep pushing the original personality as far out of the way as they can and take over as much control as they can, until you get something like this guy that I read you
Right.
this poem, where
Right.
he becomes a murderer, a mass murderer.
Yeah. Like you said, completely taken over.
I
No.
haven't seen that much, but I've seen it a handful of times where
Right.
they're completely taken over.
You said it before, Loosh.
Yes.
Feeding, literally, it is these factions at this point food, and there's enough. We could have talked for days or weeks about the source or were these part of creation. There's a lot of, but I think the important fact, and I think Sherry had even mentioned this at some point in her. I had read the last "That's a Lie" stuff that had been written in, saying it doesn't matter that origin. What as much as it matters to realize that this is real.
Yes.
Yeah,
And that's what psychiatry is blocking people from understanding. They're telling people isn't real.
exactly.
And they're doing the human race a horrible disservice.
Yeah, yeah,
And you could see all the deception and all the lies that they perpetrated for decades here.
yeah,
Their DSM, their genetic bullcrap, their biochemical bullcrap. We're the only ones that can treat this stuff. We're the only ones that know what it is because we went to college and we learned all this stuff. And they're not curing anybody. Nobody's being cured by those people.
no,
They're treating symptoms. They're merely treating symptoms.
yeah.
They're not getting at the cause, like causism does, like the Mace method does.
And it's like the magnitude of the disservice is actually, it's not even possible for us to say the magnitude in which this is elongated pain and unnecessary. It's totally and absolutely unnecessary suffering. But I would say that's by design also.
There's
So
no,
yeah, and when you get taken in, I would say your travels into the underworld is like seeing the underbelly, the truth of the world. It's hard to come out on the other side without being affected in some way, because you're seeing the truth. When you see the truth and how horrific it is, how long humanity has suffered at the sake of at this, that this has gone on for this long, that's what I've had a lot of to work on, even, is to be able to be okay with knowing all of those things, because there's bound to be even more things that get uncovered and unveiled as we go.
yeah, it's a pretty ugly side of life. It's not pleasant to look at.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
and it wasn't pleasant to work in a lot of those institutions.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Wasn't boring.
far from
It
that.
was a good place for an adrenaline junkie.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, good thing you have
Like I
that
said, if
adventurous
I
spirit.
didn't have that, I don't think I could have come through this.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I thank you for your service in this way because, again, it's a very unique journey and a journey in which is very vital to the uncovering of these kinds of truths, which I again, I believe this is a topic that is one of the most important things that anyone can talk about, and the more that we talk about this, the more that I hope that it can ripple and truly start to affect change on a greater level if people can separate themselves from these factions, if you will, whatever words we want to say, so that they know that is not their true spirit.
And the things they act on also, that these things get them to act on, that's not them either. They're being deceived.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
what's there is a pure spirit. So we're physical beings and spiritual beings. We're in those two worlds. So we're affected by spiritual beings. We're affected by physical beings.
Right.
And here they are trying to block out the spiritual. Trust the science. Trust the science. You got Fauci up there. Trust the science as he's murdering millions of people
Yeah.
all over the planet.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
why that scumbag's still walking in the free.
I know. And the list on that end is so long globally. Truly.
Have you ever read anything by Carlos Castaneda? This Carlos was a apprentice to a very powerful shaman in Mexico. He called himself a sorcerer. Okay, so here I want to just read this one page where he's talking about this is at the end of the series of books he wrote. I'm just going to start off here where he's talking. He said I haven't heard all the claims yet. Wait a bit longer and see how you feel. I'm going to subject you to a blitz. So this is the or the sorcerer talking to Carlos. He said, that is, I'm going to subject your mind to tremendous onslaughts, and you cannot get up and leave because you're caught. Not because I'm holding you prisoner, but because something in you will prevent you from leaving. That's like me. I couldn't walk away from this crazy stuff. While another part of you is going to go truthfully berserk. He says, so brace yourself. He said, there's something in me which was, I felt, a glutton for punishment. That's like me. He said he was right. He said I wouldn't have left the house for the world, and yet I didn't one bit the inanities he was spouting. I want to. Here's the shaman again saying, "I want to appeal to your analytical mind." Don Juan said, "Think for a moment and tell me how you would explain the contradiction between the intelligence of man, the engineer, and the stupidity of his systems of beliefs, or the stupidity of his contradictory behavior." Sorcerers believe that the predators have given us our systems of beliefs, our ideas of good and evil, our social mores. So he's talking about these the archons, the
Yeah.
predators, the voices. He says they are the ones who set up our hopes and expectations and dreams of success or failure. They have given us covetousness, greed, and cowardice. It is the predators who make us complacent, routinely, and egomaniacal. And then Carlos asked him, "But how can they do this, Don Juan?" I asked. Somehow, he said, somehow angered further by what he was saying. Do they whisper all this in our ears while we are asleep? Don Juan said, no, they don't do it that way. That's idiotic, Don Juan said, smiling. They are definitely more efficient and organized than that. In order to keep us obedient and meek and weak, the predators engage themselves in a stupendous maneuver. Stupendous, of course, from the point of view of a fighting strategist. A horrendous maneuver from the point of view of those who suffer it. They give us their mind. He said, do you hear me? The predators give us their mind, which becomes our mind, which is exactly what the voices are doing to schizophrenics. And they're doing it to all of us. They're giving us
Mhm.
their mind. He said the predator's mind is filled with baroque, contradictory, morose, and it's filled with fear of being discovered any minute now. Just like we're saying now, we're exposing them. They're
Yeah.
terrified of that because once people are aware of it, they're not going to feed them anymore.
Exactly.
Okay? He says, I know that even though you have never suffered hunger, went on, you have food anxiety, which is none other than the anxiety of the predator who fears that at any moment now its maneuver is going to be uncovered and food is going to be denied. Through the mind, which after all is their mind, the predators inject into the lives of human beings whatever is convenient for them, and they ensure in this manner a degree of security to act as a buffer against fear.
That's it.
So it's here's the shaman telling Carlos, this is what they are. They hit us all. I remember a preacher. He was the best preacher I've ever had. He said he was standing on the edge of the Grand Canyon and you hear a voice popping in its head said, "Jump, just jump." And we all hear that.
Yeah.
You're driving in traffic, you go, "What would it be like to drive on oncoming traffic?" Or you're standing on a bridge and you go, "What would it be like to jump off?"
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
hit us all. I imagine attaching a one of those light flash grenades, to the stun grenades, to that negative thought and sending it back down the hill with that explosive on it, and then imagining it going off down there. Going,
Right.
okay, take your thought back.
Yeah. Don't want this. Thanks.
Yeah, thought by thought, you have to be aware, you
Exactly.
know, that those thoughts are coming in from the dark side.
And the one big thing that I think that is imperative is there's nothing to fear in this. It's just the awareness of this,
Yes,
which is that's what I thought was interesting about the approach. I think that the with all of the propaganda around the evil, it brings fear. It's just another layer of fear. Whereas it's again that's propaganda. So if you let that all go and just try to reclaim the sovereignty of the soul, then you have the power to protect and stay sovereign in your truth, in your light, whatever words that work for a unique soul. But that is it is not some these voices are not something to fear.
don't give in to the fear.
Exactly. Exactly.
That was one rule that I always had. No matter how terrifying what's happening in front of you is, you can't give in to the fear because then they win. They know they got you. As soon as you give in to that fear, they got you.
Because that's like the total power being taken away. Yeah. Yeah. If humanity, I really feel that when humanity realizes how powerful they are, how powerful humanity is, and what the original truth of what a human means, that
I,
alone,
I believe you're right.
that alone is power, taking the power back.
That's why they're always trying to beat us down.
Exactly. Exactly. We've seen that play out on a scale in the last 4 years.
Yep, they're
to the
making a major push right now.
Yeah, yes, they are. Yeah, and the plans for things in 2025. You just can see what I've always looked at this as like, you can see the strategy truly that it has taken. And in a strategic way, you're like, wow, unified you are.
Yeah, and look how time after time they're trying to terrify us.
Yeah.
COVID, and then bird flu, and then all this other kind of crap that they keep coming up with.
Yeah. Oh, and
And the Earth
fears
is
next
dying,
year.
and the ocean is rising, and the temperature is rising, and it's all this negative horse crap
Yeah,
that there's no truth to it. But since they control the mainstream media, they're
exactly.
perpetuating it on these lies on all of us.
Exactly. A barrage, just constant.
Constant,
It's
constant.
just like you said, relentless. That is like a perfect word for it because it continues to this day. And that's how we know that when that ceases to exist, then we know we're in a different experience. But until such point, it's still here. It's still a huge problem causing unnecessary suffering.
Don't comply.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I have a hat that says "Don't acquiesce." It's pretty long. Yeah, yeah. Jerry, this has been beyond a pleasure. I can't thank you enough for your time today and the energy to be here. Is there? Let's do a couple of things. Is there anything any last thoughts you'd like to drop? And then, of course, we have all of your information and the all the things we're doing. Let people know where they can find you too.
Okay, you can go to my website at jerrymarzinsky.com. Okay,
Perfect.
there's a lot more information there. And I have people who have gone through schizophrenia and come out the other side who are willing to come on and talk also. If in the future you want me to arrange for that.
Wow, that would be brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.